Like the Real Housewives of Max Verstappen up in here.
Checo's checked out.
Joe Manu is off the track. That steak is cooked.
A lot is at stake for Steak F1.
Man, even the broadcast couldn't handle that stat.
My heart almost was screaming like, how can anybody be a Lewis Hamilton fan?
No.
Not on my 2024 bingo card.
Yeah, we're gonna have to create a new one now.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Lights Out Latest. My name is Marina, and I'm here with Tristan and Jason. Unfortunately, Steven can join us today because he is sick, but he should be back next week. Let's get straight into it. It's been a chaotic first race weekend, but we got a new headline. Christian Horner saga, I want to say ends, but I feel like this is only the start, not the beginning. Red Bull released a quote, which I will read. It says, the investigation into allegations made against Mr. Horner is complete, and Red Bull can confirm that the grievance has been dismissed. The complainant has a right of appeal. Red Bull is confident, though, that the investigation has been fair, rigorous, and impartial. The investigation report is confidential and contains the private information of the parties and third parties who assisted in the investigation, and therefore we will not be commenting further. Out of respect for all concerned, Red Bull will continue striving to meet the highest of workplace standards. What do you guys make of this statement, and do you think this is the end of the issue?
It's PR central. That is the most PR of PR answers I could ever think of. I think it is fundamentally. I understand they were saying we were talking in our group chat that there was a whistleblower that was trying to make it an even more mountain out of molehill kind of thing. But yeah. I think the official allegation, I think that's wrapped up. Obviously, you're saying you think it's just the beginning. Why do you think it's just the beginning?
Well, there was also a statement by Christian Horner, but he met with the FIA president, and Mohammed bin Salim, and he also met with F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali. And I feel like the F1 paddock is not convinced enough, and the general public are convinced enough that this is the end of the issue. That Red Bull addressed it the way they said they addressed it, if that makes sense. Red Bull said that we feel the investigation was thorough and we are dismissing all claims. Christian also said, I won't comment on any anonymous speculation, but to reiterate, I have always denied these allegations. I respected the integrity of the independent investigation, fully cooperated with every step of the way. It was thorough and fair investigation conducted by an independent specialist, and it has concluded dismissing all complaints made. I just don't feel like any of that has thoroughly addressed what actually happened, if that makes sense. I feel like fans, and more importantly, F1
obviously. Obviously people are curious and want to know what really happened and prompted. Yeah. And since thankfully, my take on it is it seems like nobody did anything really bad or got seriously hurt or there's no legal criminal issues like we said in the past. They've been able to close this out and say, there's no real issue here. We've been able to resolve it. But, people being people will speculate, will say rumors, will try to draw up drama. Especially, I want to mention, Jos Verstappen just straight up said he pretty much wants Horner out. This is a quote from Jos Verstappen. He said, there is tension here while he remains in the position. The team is in danger of being torn apart. It can't go on the way it is. It will explode. He's playing the victim when he's causing the problems. So, direct quote from Max Verstappen's father calling out Christian Horner should leave. Now, the rest of the team seems to be fine. They've all been saying, oh no, we're strong, we're together. Yeah. There's even a mechanic that tweeted before he took it down, oh, I always believed in you, Christian. So glad that you made it past and through this. Happy that the team is together on this. He ended up having to delete the tweet because it's not official PR stuff. But it like you said, there's gonna be people that are gonna drag it out like Jos, and other people that will be able to grow up and move on.
Oh, wise and moral compass, Jos Verstappen. Yes, we'll definitely listen to him.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. I was how much do you actually trust a single word that comes out of Jos Verstappen's mouth? This is the same guy who left Max Verstappen at a gas station when he was a kid because he lost a race. I don't trust what he says, ever. But I also would understand why there would be grievances within the team. And I think in a situation like this, people tend to make up their own stories. They also tend to take sides. People that actually know what's going on, they're I agree with her, I agree with him. And if more people on the team agree with her than agree with him, or whoever that employee was, that would create tension. And I would understand that. And I also thought it was interesting. I was going to comment that Max didn't seem like he was completely happy. I won't say that he was like, okay, this is not the right answer. This is not the answer, or he shouldn't have been absolved. But Max didn't comment on it at all. He did the typical PR thing. And I think had Max been completely happy with the investigation and with the current standings of the team, I think he would have expressed that a little more. We know Max, he's no BS. So I don't know. I still feel like there's more to come. That's why I said the start and not the end.
Yeah, I wonder if Max is siding with his father on this, because we know Marco is like pro Max, and Horner and Marco have had disagreements in the past. So I wonder if the Verstappens are on the side of Marco, and then Horner, they just want him out any way possible, which I don't know why. They've created a dynasty of a successful F1 team. Like, he could be going on 4 championships this year. Why destabilize it now?
Yeah. Well, speaking of Jos, I wanted to really quickly comment. He did apparently have a meeting with Toto Wolff. A lot of people speculating that a move for 2025 for Verstappen to Mercedes could be on. What do you guys think? If you're asking me as a resident Red Bull Max Verstappen fan, I think there's absolutely no way, unless this problem is bigger than we think. But what do y'all think? Any chances?
I mean, the rumor mill and the think tank would obviously say, like, this is a great just thing to think about. Like, it's awesome. Like, if that's, like, rumored to be, like, not true, but, like, just, it's fun to think about in a way that he might, to pull almost a Lewis Hamilton and just, like, in the middle of his career, go completely switch boats. It'd be hilarious if he went to, again, Mercedes, just like Lewis did.
The biggest
I would say the merit is there, but it's not. The only thing I could say is money talks. So if if Mercedes has the money, like if they up front, I don't know, again, you probably know the numbers of his deal, like in terms of what he's making, but if they could like increase that by a couple $100 million, then I think it's worth thinking about if I'm Max Verstappen, but you never know.
I don't even know if he cares about the money anymore. Like, the biggest reason I see him for moving is Honda leaving for the 2026 regulations. So if Verstappen wants to keep winning and he's not confident Ford, Red Bull powertrains are going to be competitive, he might consider swapping over to Mercedes, which have had, incredible run with Lewis Hamilton up until 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I still don't see it. But what I could potentially see is another rumor that came out as Toto Wolff talking to Sebastian Vettel. I saw something saying that Sebastian had recently been getting all his checks done to keep his racing license. Should an opportunity present itself that was encouraging or was attractive enough for him to come back to the racing field. Any thoughts at Sebastian to fill that 2025 seat?
Nah, I think he's enjoying life a little too much right now. I don't think he really, again, we've talked about it a lot, is like the potential of Sebastian coming back is very real, because he literally said, like, when he left, he was like, it's not really a goodbye, it's more of a maybe see you later. So
hey, Alonso said the same thing when he left in 2018, and he's back.
Yep.
He's been getting podiums. I think what's interesting is, I think it was a few months ago, Toto was like, no, Vettel's doing his own thing. But now, more recently, he's changed his tone. He's been like, we need to decide between experience or rookie, like young performance. And right now, Kimi Antonelli kind of didn't do well at his first F2 race. So we'll see what happens. But I think Vettel might be back on the table.
It's always potential.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's going to be sooner rather than later that they decide to either go for that experience, like we're talking Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel, Carlos Sainz, or to go back to a younger guy, someone like, or go back to, I'd say, just go to a younger guy like Kimi Antonelli. Anyways, let's move into the weekend. Thursday was free practice, which was usually a Friday, but this week was Thursday, and it will be again next week. It wasn't really a representative session, considering that Daniel Ricciardo topped that session. And ended up, P13 in the race. But free practice 2 that same day was very interesting. I know we talked about it. They did some short runs in the beginning and they did long runs. And Mercedes seemed really strong. But then they completely dropped off. So I thought that was really interesting. What'd y'all think?
It was, I mean, Mercedes in general, like throughout the free practice, also qualifying. I mean, we'll get to qualifying in a second. For some reason, they seem to have early speed, and then it just like in Q1, Q2, and then Q3, they just kind of tanked a little bit. So I think it was just the short run speed in general of the Mercedes was good, but then over a long term period of time, like it wasn't. And it seemed like that was relatively the same in FP2. I mean, again, like we saw like the Red Bulls were like, it was like 0.4 seconds, I think, ahead. They were like, or not ahead, but they were looking for like race pace wise, at least. They were looking really strong. So I don't know why the fall off was so hard in FP2 for Mercedes, but it seemed like it panned out like that the whole rest of the weekend. Except for, I mean, George Russell was pretty quick most of the weekend. It was Hamilton was struggling quite a bit.
Yeah, it was the weirdest weekend between practice, qualifying, and the race. Like, usually during a weekend, like, oh, if you finish top of practice, you're going to finish, like, first or second every practice session. Then you're going to do well in qualifying. Then you're definitely going to do well in the race. Like, that's a normal F1 weekend. This weekend, every session, different persons, fast and slow for practice. And then qualifying was, like, super, like, razor-thin margins close.
Yeah.
Like, less than a second between the top 10. Insane how close it was. But then you get to the race, and it was the most standard, boring, like, everybody was already in the right order, and nobody could catch each other type of race. Except for Perez, because he had the Red Bull and was able to finish second. So, you know, that's why it was so weird, is everybody seemed so mixed up through the practices. You know, definitely Red Bull and Ferrari, like, sandbagging like crazy, which I didn't really get. Like, why do that? But, oh well.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I think it was really weird. I think they were running on higher fuel loads as well than some of the other people, for sure. Trying to understand the DEG, especially for Ferrari's side, which honestly, they seem to have taken a good step, and we'll get into that in the race. But first, qualifying really confirmed what everybody already knew. Alpine is just not there. They're too heavy, their drivers are not happy, and their team are not happy, which is why we have reports that their head of aerodynamics and their technical director have left the team or resigned.
What a disaster.
Yeah, nothing completely confirmed yet, but that's what the reports are saying.
If that's true, and like the formal departure is a resignation, like that's, I don't know, that's even more worrisome than getting like fired, because like it seems like then Alpine would understand that they have a problem with their like R&D. But if these dudes are leaving, then it's like, okay, like they have no faith in the team. Like it's like we're going downhill rapidly.
They can't even fix it. It just
that's what
bad.
I mean. Yeah, it's like from forces above or forces within, they can't. They're driving a brick. I mean, that's just basically what they're dealing with. So yeah.
Well, another big thing from Q1 is that, and I'm sure you probably noticed this, Jason, Ferrari crucially used 2 brand new sets of softs, and Leclerc could not stop complaining about it until into the race, pretty much, that he was like, we used 2 new sets of soft in Q1. That meant I had to use a used set in Q3, and it didn't get me the pole that I wanted, and I was upset about it and whatnot. But at the end of that, Valtteri Bottas P16, Zhou Guanyu, his teammate right behind him in P17, Logan Sargent, another rough day at P18, and the 2 Alpines back-to-back in 19th and 20th. Q2, I would say, was the best of qualifying. That's where everybody had their best.
It's because Leclerc set the best time of all of qualifying in Q2.
Yep.
Like, the conditions were there where he can set a faster lap time than Max. Like, Ferrari seems to have fixed their race pace and tire wear issues somewhat, but they kept their qualifying pace, which is really encouraging. Like, if we could get, you know, qualifying pole position for like Monaco or like Baku, like, you know, we might be able to win a few races this year, but oh well.
Yeah.
They also saw I think Hülkenberg, right? Hülkenberg got into Q3 out of
killed
Q2.
It.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, again, Stroll did not make it to Q3. I'm not surprised, but like Alonso making it into Q3 was also like is what happened. But the fact that Hülkenberg managed to beat a Aston Martin, and I mean he did that last year, I believe, at Bahrain.
He was always a deadly force in qualifying. The problem is that during race pace, it would just fall back so far. This week they didn't seem to fall back that far. Like they've definitely fixed some of the race pace issues. Some of
Yeah.
that might come from the Ferrari parts they take on. Like they take I believe some like Ferrari suspension parts, like the mechanical setup of the car is less tough on the tires. And that improves so much like their race pace tire wear. So
the
they
hot scar.
qualify good like the Ferraris, and the race pace is improving like the Ferraris. It just, Red Bull is in such another league that they're not all the way there yet.
No. The hot scars looked really racy this weekend, but it was like they're also being helped by Alpine really sucking. And then also there was like, well, Lance rebounded really well, but there was that lap 1 incident between Lance and oh god,
Nico.
was it Sargent?
Yeah, he did go from
Oh, it was
20th
Hulkenberg.
to 10th, right? Where did he finish?
He finished 10th, yeah. Yep.
Like nobody noticed that. Everybody just rags on Stroll, but he made up 10 places that race.
Yep.
Like
He had a really good race. Overall, one of the things, and you mentioned it, and we said about Charles setting the best time in this thing was it was so weird because nobody was able to improve upon that best lap in Q3, which I feel like I've only ever seen when there's big weather shifts. And I didn't think I could be wrong, but I don't feel like there were any huge changes in the weather. We didn't see any rain. We didn't see anything like that. Where to have that huge, not huge, because I think it was maybe a couple hundredths of a second between what ended up being Max's pole lap and the best lap of qualifying. But I don't know. I just thought that was really weird. But yeah, like you said, Lance Stroll out in P12, Yuki Tsunoda qualifying right up ahead of him in P11. Alex Albon failing to make Q3, which I feel like is a little bit sad. I feel like I had high hopes for Alex. He is on my fantasy team. But he ended up P13 with Danny Rick P14 and Kevin Magnussen P15. Into Q3, like Jason mentioned before, top 8 were separated by less than half a second. Is this the most competitive we're going to see? Is that going to be, you think qualifying is going to be always where we're going to see those closest and the race is just going to be one standout guy?
Yeah, that's kind of, look at the race, that's exactly how it went. So I have faith in maybe certain circuits it will be a little closer in terms of the race, but for qualifying, I think we're going to have such a tight battle for the pole between, top 8 in general, top 6, I would say, is more likely. I could see Mercedes being there in some of the fight, but also falling back a little bit. Also McLaren, they were quick, but not as quick as I think people were expecting them to be.
Yeah.
So, but top 8 in qualifying, I think, is going to be a battle all year long, and I'm so here for it. I'm so excited for it. Qualifying was personally I know that's so lame to say. We had a whole race, and I think qualifying was the most exciting thing of the weekend, but it's true. I don't know. The race, again, we're not there yet. We're going to get to the race, but it was so boring.
I am really, really excited for sprint races this year because once you take out tire wear and tire strategy, all these cars, one lap pace, are so close to each other. And I think sprint races are going to be electric. And qualifying this year, if it stays the same way of where cars are so close to each other, it'll be a complete toss-up. Maybe top 3, you could kind of guess, oh yeah, it'll be a Ferrari and Red Bulls, or maybe a Mercedes or McLaren, depending on the day. But from 1 to 10, or even 1 to 18, because we all know the Alpines are terrible right now. It's going to be electric. I really enjoyed qualifying.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be really, really electric. It's just, I think that might be the only chance for someone other than a Red Bull, more specifically, someone other than Max to get a win this year, is in those sprint races where you don't have to worry about Deg. Because I think Carlos was the one talking about it, and they asked him at the end, and we're kind of getting into the race here, but Carlos was on the softs, and Checo in front of him was on the hards, and he was like, no, sorry, wrong way around. Checo was on the softs, and Carlos was on the hards. He's like, when are those softs going to drop off to where I'm quicker than Checo? And I think he very quickly came to the realization, he's like, Red Bull has the same Deg on soft compound tires that the whole rest of the grid has on hards and on mediums. So I do think, I agree that the sprint races are going to be cool to see. But like we said before, Max on pole with Charles P2, George P3, and crucially, Carlos 4th and Perez 5th. But as we move into race, I know you mentioned it, Tristan. There was a little bit of collision between Nico Hulkenberg and Lance Stroll. Did you guys think that was a race incident, a turn one incident, or do you think that should have been looked into further?
It's just turn one at Bahrain. I mean, well, turn one anywhere, honestly, is always a crapshoot in terms of, again, these guys are the elite of the elite, but 90% of the time, if we're going to see a collision, it's probably going to be turn one, lap one, depending on where we go. But, no, it's just a racing deal. I mean, Stroll was nicknamed, what? Didn't Seb nickname him the Torpedo at some point in time? So, was it Stroll?
No, I think that was Danny Kvyat. I think that was Daniel Kvyat, not Lance Stroll. But I would arguably also nickname Lance Torpedo.
Lance Stroll. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah,
fair.
I think I don't know, someone on Sky, I couldn't tell you who it was, said that they just felt like it was Nico Hulkenberg was at fault and that he was just rusty. That it had been 3 months and that they were just rusty, and that happens. I agree with that, and I still think it was a turn one incident. I just thought it was really funny that they specifically singled out Nico and not Lance and was like, yeah, Nico's just rusty. Like, this old dog who's been out for 2 months is just rusty. I thought that was really funny.
Lance paid off the commentators.
Anyways, big thing into this race was also focused on the Ferraris. Both Charles and Carlos complained of the whole race of brake issues. Carlos's was more in the beginning, but then Charles's was like the whole race. He was like, I'm sliding everywhere. I can't brake. I have no reference from lap to lap. It just gets getting worse and worse. I think the engineers told him it was 100-degree difference between his left and his right, which is insane. Do you think
definitely
this is
sounds like a brake issue?
Yeah. I feel like this is something.
Thankfully, I think it's just like teething issues. I don't think it's going to be like chronic. Like, this isn't going to keep up every single weekend, like just getting the tire heating right, getting the brake heating right, getting the ducting right. Obviously, it wasn't good. It was really frustrating to see Leclerc like totally drop the ball fighting George Russell there. Like, he would just keep running wide, and then Sainz like overtook him, and like they were fighting like super close. I don't know how they crashed. I didn't crash, but oh well.
It was that, and also, didn't the Mercedes, both of the Mercedes cars had, it wasn't brake issues, but their like power unit was running really hot like throughout the race, right? Or I can't remember. Again, I watched the whole thing.
Yeah, all the Mercedes cars.
I watched the whole race.
Even the Williams and the McLaren had that kind of issue where they were overheating. Supercar was a cooling issue. And George seemed really confused after the race. He was like, I don't know where this is coming from. But I think Lando already changed some parts earlier in the weekend. It was control electronics. Williams, I kept seeing you would go on to like Alex's steering wheel, like the steering wheel cam, where you could see like it's from his head and you kind of steer the steering wheel, and it would always say like caution too hot. Too hot. I saw it like countless times throughout the race. So I don't know. This could be something that could potentially really hinder Mercedes, McLaren, Williams, anyone who's Mercedes powered, and give Ferrari the advantage going forward, I think.
Eventually.
Oh yeah, I like the sound of that.
Well, that wasn't the only issue Mercedes had, though, because Lewis also reported a broken seat. Which
broken seat.
When I saw that, I thought he's coming to the pits immediately. Is that not a black and orange flag?
It should, but it's like depends, I guess. The last one I could think of for like seating issues was Baku 2017. His headrest, that like thing that like comes out when you jump out of the car, like came loose and like kept rising out and was gonna fly out of the car. So he'd like come in and get that changed in a pit stop. But they didn't even flag him for it. He just came in on his own choice. So I thought that was really scary too, because the belts are like built into the seat, and the seat is literally just this one molded piece of carbon. So once that breaks, like I guess you slide around a little, you can't feel the car as well moving. Like,
so That's
that
what
was
it
really
was?
weird. You never hear that.
That's what it was. It was like the carbon broke. Like when he said the seat broke, I got a little confused because I was like, "Well,
Yeah,
what?"
they never really covered it again. They just
No.
said it
No.
it was broke. I'm imagining like the carbon's like shape of the seat just like cracked.
Yeah.
I'm assuming
I
that's
don't
probably
know.
what happened. Well, he also he didn't really comment much on it after the race either. Like, I'm assuming it's just kind of like a driver discretion kind of thing, where it's like if it was a big thing, I
Mhm.
think he probably would have come in. I think he's smart enough to acknowledge that this is one race in a long career. So I think if it was something super super bad, he probably would have come in. But I think he probably just felt like it was okay.
Yeah.
Another thing with Mercedes powered cars, but I think probably more just a McLaren issue. Both Oscar and Lando, they went on the F1 pre-race or post-race show and said, "I wish the last corner didn't exist." Lando said he thinks he could have done that corner faster in a street car with his eyes closed than he did all day in that McLaren. Which I thought was really interesting because I feel like I really didn't see it on the broadcast at all.
Yeah, I feel like the last corner is not the most difficult. Like turns 1 and 2, like I've done so many time trials on like the F1 game, and that is so difficult to get right. Not to run out on the curb, then you lose traction on the curb. And then even like 4 is like tough in the S section, in the hairpin where Leclerc kept locking up, like that's obviously a tough corner. Really interesting to hear that you said like the last corner was the toughest.
I kind of wish we
Yeah.
had more on board. I feel like I didn't see any Lando on board throughout the race. I mean, granted, he was like what battling. Where did he finish? Finished like fifth or
Sixth?
seventh? I can't remember. But like still,
think-
I don't feel like I saw enough of it. Now I want to see him running through the last couple corners there to see like what his struggle was in terms of
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I never
Yeah,
really
you
saw.
end
I
up
don't think
finishing 6th.
Sixth.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was it. He was. I think it was what was George, Lando, Lewis, Oscar.
Yep, that was
Oh.
5, 6, 7, 8, and then
Yeah.
both of the Aston Martins were 9 and 10.
Yeah,
Sounds
which
about right.
also, honestly, I think is a good pull for Aston. I think they compared to where they started. I don't think Alonso could have done much more to hang on to that P6.
Mhm.
And Lance, like you said, with that crash in I don't want to call it a crash. It was just an incident. Dropping him down to the bottom of the field, coming back to P10. I think that was a stellar drive and one he didn't quite get the credit for.
I bet they're a little bit disappointed. Like you qualify 6th
Sure.
after a year of being on the podium. I bet they really wish they could have fought with the Mercedes today. I mean yesterday, but they really didn't.
Yeah. Well, Alonso also said like that lap that put me P6 was a stellar lap. He was like, there was nothing left in it, not a single hundredth of a second. He also, I think, was okay with the fact that this is where they ended off the year last year. I think everyone, with the exception of maybe McLaren, is right around where they finished the year last year, in that top kind of field where Mercedes is kind of battling more with the Astons if they are in the Red Bulls. Red Bull is in a league of their own. And then that Ferrari is kind of there. McLaren is kind of there. McLaren maybe a little bit further back than they want it to be. But yeah, I think that's crazy. Another thing with the Ferraris, now that I've mentioned it, something I didn't notice until I was going back in the footage and also looking at some of the press conference stuff. Ferrari undercut Carlos Sainz with Charles Leclerc. I feel like you don't see this often where the team undercuts their own driver. And
That was
Carlos
really funny. Yeah,
Carlos
tell
said
me.
it didn't really affect his race much because he was able to get past Charles quickly and then go and overtake George. But why would you, if Charles is already having a tough race, why undercut Carlos with Charles, who's having brake issues, just to have your two drivers battle it out on track and potentially crash, given that Charles has brake issues?
I mean, is there any strategy there? Like, I remember hearing in the broadcast that Bahrain has had at least one virtual or in like live safety car, and that didn't happen in the Grand Prix. So like maybe they were planning towards like not luck, but like statistics on their side that they were hoping for a caution.
Yeah, I heard like even the Mercedes were underfueled because they expected at least one virtual safety car where they could like turn down the engine mode, save a little bit of fuel, and they just didn't. So like most of the end of the race, they were just coasting, both of the Mercedes.
Yep.
But yeah, that was really funny. Is like after Sainz came out of the pits again, he was immediately right behind Leclerc and had to like fight him again. But obviously he got through because Leclerc was really just struggling with the brakes and could not get going at the same pace, and Sainz was able to pass him. At least it provided a little bit of action. Like there is no overtaking, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, once I saw that Charles had big issues, I was listening to his radio through F1 TV, and I literally heard them say it's going to be close with Carlos on pit exit. And I was like, that is something you say to a driver who's like legitimately battling another driver on track, and you're trying to undercut someone. And that's when it like first like hit me. I was like, this is really strange. Like, why are they doing this?
I'm surprised
And
they didn't bring in team orders.
Yeah, well, again, I saw so many videos as well of like, none of the Ferrari team were there at the podium later, which I know is kind of foreshadowing, but they were there, but they were just kind of hidden there, and I was like, this is Lewis last year.
You can see him in the video, right? Like I swear you can see him in the video, and it's like, yeah, but they were carrying I think Leclerc's car or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah,
but yeah.
I don't know. I thought that was interesting. Another big teammate battle, Yuki and Daniel. Team orders was Yuki let Daniel through because Daniel had the soft tires and Yuki was on the hards. Yuki didn't let him through at first. He's like, nope, I'm good. Just going to sit here. Next lap, he eventually does let Daniel through. Wasn't happy about it. And then ultimately, Daniel was not able to get after Kevin Magnussen's car in front. But also, did y'all catch the after race incident between the two of them?
I heard about it. Yeah, I heard about it. I saw obviously their post race interviews, but I didn't see the move itself. I'm gonna have to probably look that up after the podcast. But I just what Daniel called it. It was very immature, and then Yuki didn't seem like he was very complacent with like being not called immature, but like it didn't seem like he was gonna budge, which I think is what we used to know Yuki as, or we do know Yuki as. I thought he was like a little bit more complacent last year, but yeah.
All credit to Kevin Magnussen. He kept them both behind. You know, Ricardo on softs, and then Yuki. You know, he had track position for a little bit, but yeah, no. After the race, Yuki ran wide at one of the turns, and Ricardo was going to overtake him on the in lap. And Yuki came right back, like inches from the car. Like they almost made contact, and this was a cool down lap. So
yeah, I thought it was just. I think Daniel said it best, and I think Daniel was trying to be the mature figure of AlphaTauri or Racing Bulls or V-Carb or whatever you want to call it. I think he was trying to be that older, mature headspace where it's like, I'm just gonna like let the team handle this internally. My take on it was he was being immature. This isn't how we should handle it. Not to mention, I think an interesting thing that Daniel brought up was when they decided this was going to be the ultimate strategy, Yuki knew there was a good chance that Daniel would be on softs and he would be on hards for the end of the race. And they had already pre-decided that if this was the scenario, team orders would be put into place and Daniel would be let through to go after the front runners, given that he was on softs and Yuki was on hards. So I think that even more plays to what Daniel was saying. Is like, it was just immature. We talked about this. You knew it was coming. And then you act like this, like both before and after the race. I don't know. I chalk it down to immaturity.
Big time.
But yeah, another big kind of like we talked about Lance Stroll kind of going unnoticed. Stake and Zhou Guanyu went super unnoticed all race. He finished P11. He had really good pace. He was fighting with the Astons for that last kind of couple points. And kind of a side note, Stake's F2 driver, Zane Maloney, won both the sprint race and the feature race this weekend. So, I mean, I know we talked about Joe potentially losing his seat and possibly Valtteri losing his seat, and we potentially talked about that being other people on the grid, but I think they could have some good junior drivers coming up as well.
A lot of potential over there. Again, I was actually keeping an eye on him for most of the race, Joe. They had some quick cuts to him showing like his strategy and how it was going. I noticed that he was contending right around the bubble in P10 for quite some time. Awesome that he finished. I mean, it sucks he just missed it. But Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
gained
very
7
subtle.
places.
Yeah, subtle, quiet day for Zhou, but like impressive. It was an impressive day.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I agree.
and I hope Audi really brings up all those young drivers that Stake has right now in the lower series. Like, they definitely have a future for them once Bottas leaves. You know?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, I want to talk about Marina's favorite team because I think people are talking about it and they're nervous about it for the rest of the season. However, I don't think credit is being given to the correct parties given how good of a race this was for Max Verstappen. Now, Red Bull did get the 1-2, but Max finished 22 seconds ahead of Checo, which, in case anybody was wondering, is the biggest win margin ever in Formula One. So, I don't know. I just don't feel like people are getting the credit. Like, he didn't get driver of the day. Fine. Carlos Sainz deserved it.
Ever.
But,
I was gonna say,
yeah.
is that
Biggest
definitively
ever
true? The biggest win
You
margin?
Yeah.
maybe in Max Verstappen's. No, definitely. There's had to be like a Ferrari or something that finished like a minute ahead.
I'm trying to think like back to like the 70s or something where maybe like I don't know.
It's
But
the biggest win margin.
again, that's
like, from
if
first to
that.
second.
Huh. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, if we want to look at the weekend as a whole, like
I didn't think, but it is.
right. If we were going to look at the weekend as a whole, Red Bull basically teased us the whole time. Oh, there you go. Biggest ever winning margin. Huh. Okay. Yeah, so they like teased us the whole weekend. They're like, "Oh yeah, we got some, free practice. You got, we're not topping those. We're letting the teams get it's, we're not as great as we said we were, blah 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 blah." Qualifying comes around until like Q3 it was like, well, like it's comparable, like we're quick, but you guys are right there. Max takes pole, and then he wins the race by 22 seconds. But like, I mean, it's just like not unexpected, but we were teased. You're teased. I remember walking around on campus on Thursday and Friday, like, okay, Saturday, I'm excited. Like, this is actually looking pretty good. Like, this is hype. And then of course it happened. But
I think it was really telling is the science interview. Like, I don't know if Marina mentioned it before, but he was getting interviewed after qualifying, and the question was like, "Oh, so do you think you will be able to fight in the race tomorrow?" And Science was like, "Oh yeah, but the Red Bulls, no, it'll be a good race for second." Is basically what he said. So it was kind of like I knew it was gonna end up like this.
Yeah, well, because they were asking him, like, do you think you're going to be able to fight the Red Bulls in the race tomorrow? And he starts to say, like, yeah. And then he goes, wait, the Red Bulls? Max? Absolutely not. We're fighting for second.
Yeah, that was so funny, but, like, terrifying at the same time.
As much as I love Max, and I'm such a big Max fan, I don't like that. I don't like Bahrain season opener, race 1 of 24 races, and they're already, like, us fighting with Max? Are you kidding? Are you delusional?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. I don't like that. I feel like that's giving up before the season even started. And I think Jolyon Palmer also made a good point. He was like, they're not being they don't want to be delusional. They know where they're fighting at the moment. Not to say that later in the season they can't be fighting those Red Bulls in the race like they are.
Yeah, it changes track to track even. Yeah.
Yeah. But also, like you said, Bahrain is such a different track compared to other tracks. It's very distinct. It was also, like, surprisingly compared to other years, very cold. So
and usually tire wear is really high, so this just extends Red Bull like tire wear advantage.
Yep.
Yeah. But just to kind of end off on the Max, achieving a Grand Slam, because he did take pole, he did lead every lap of the race, and then he ended up taking the win and the fastest lap. He joins Ascari and Schumacher for 5 Grand Slams. And he's also the first driver ever to get a Grand Slam in 5 consecutive seasons. As well as taking Lewis's current record for most consecutive scored points, which I think is at like 1,030 consecutive points. Just
wow,
overall incredible. Not much more I feel like he could take from that. But I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts? I want to know thoughts on, like, the full race. Good, bad. Are we giving this race like a ranking? Is it a bad ranking or a good ranking?
I said it earlier. I mean, again, he was just boring to me. I don't know. Like, it wasn't, and that isn't even just necessarily because of the fact that Max Verstappen won by 22 seconds. It's not. You have a rest of a race there, but like, I don't know. It just didn't seem that it wasn't competitive. It just seemed like, I think we saw a couple really good overtakes. We saw, again, I was saying this in our group chat, is like, I'm switching to Sainz in the fantasy because he seemed like the only driver out there that like was driving with heart in a way. Like, I don't know. The redemption arc is real. Yeah. And then like subtle little highlights like Stroll getting up to P10, and like we said, Joe was battling it really hard, but and then it was just funny to see the Alpines crash and burn. Like, I mean, that's hilarious. But
yeah,
you know, I don't know. It's, if I can put a number on it, I'd say the race was like a 6. I don't know. It just wasn't there for me.
Who was your driver of the day?
That's a great question. So I know Sainz got it, right? And then, I mean, he deserves it, but also winning by 22 seconds. How can you not say Max Verstappen's driver of the day?
That's what I would say. I feel like enough Dutchies watching the race to where I was kind of expecting Max to take driver of the day.
Yeah.
But I think there's a certain point where people are just expecting it, so it's nothing crazy. And I was talking to my parents about this as well, and they were like, what else were you expecting? Max to win by like 2 seconds? No, he was always going to win by a big thing. I just don't think that people accept how hard that actually is. Yes, he has a great car, but he won by 22 seconds off his teammate, not off a Ferrari or whatever. That was 22 seconds from his teammate. And I think it just shows the execution in it. Like, not everyone can execute that. And I think, obviously, Carlos is one of those drivers for sure that if given the chance, or maybe Charles could definitely pull that off. We know Lewis did it in the past. I don't think it was as big of a gap, but definitely with these big gaps over Valtteri. But yeah, I think
it was really funny after the final round of pit stops when Max came in and he came out and he was gaining a lead, but at some point I think Crofty was like, we're looking at Perez and what's it called? He's got a 10-second gap in between him and Max. And then literally like 5 seconds later, like I look at my phone doing something, I look up and it's 12 seconds. And it's like what are, like, it was like a lap.
Yeah, it's like the new DRS rule where you get DRS on lap 2. Like, didn't matter. He was already over a second ahead.
Yeah, I was like, man.
It was dominant, yeah. And I agree with Tristan, is pretty standard, pretty boring, pretty expectations. Like, no safety cars, no real drama. During the race. There's a couple of nice parts, like when the Ferraris fought each other, and then like Tsunoda and Ricciardo were fighting each other, and like George made some moves. My driver of the day would be Stroll. Like, even though he qualified 12th and had a mistake to go back to 20th, he still had to fight his way back, and he fought his way back to 10th. So not only did he finish better than qualifying after dropping back, but he like finished in the points. So good for him.
I mean, but
every sport has their boring races, and it's going to change race to race based on the track. At least I hope.
So.
Well, I also think that there were some very interesting battles on track. Like, you look at kind of George at one point he was like 2 seconds from Max or 3 seconds from Max, and commentators started to be like, oh, here we go. This is what Mercedes, like, they hyped up their race pace a lot when they said, yeah, our qualifying wasn't there, but we switched to a race spec. Trying to like put all of our eggs in the race basket and hoping that we could still qualify well, especially with Lewis's car. But then they were nursing those issues. So it was like, I feel like as soon as he overtook Carlos Sainz, was in second place, it was like, oh, but now I have like no power, virtually no power. And I remember the commentators talking about Lewis potentially having an issue because he was at 1% battery. And it was like, no, that's not an issue. That he just used up all of his battery very, very quickly, and then had to kind of go into recharge mode, like lift and coast and stuff. So I agree with Jason. I hope that this isn't like a continuing thing where it's like every race is like this, but I think that it will change race to race. There were some tight battles on track, just not a lot of overtaking. Everybody kind of in that
uncompetitive. Yeah, even uncompetitive seasons like 2020 and then 2023, there's always drama and fun races. And especially seeing qualifying, how close it was, gives me hope. Like, hey, this could be a really exciting year for the rest of the field. This track wasn't the time for it.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I won't go through all of the Drivers' Championship just because if you want to know, you can look at the race results because it's exactly the same. But constructors is Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, Stake, Haas, the RBs, Williams, and last but not least, Alpine. Well, I guess they are least. To rephrase that. Lastly, Alpine. Before we end off, predictions for Jeddah next week, everybody. I can go first.
I have one more thing to say before predictions. Well, this is a prediction, but mark my words, those two constructors aren't going to leave 1 and 2 the rest of the year. I think it's going to be Red Bull at the top, Ferrari right behind them, and I don't think it's going to change. That's a bold prediction.
That is a bold prediction. I don't think it's going to stay that way. There's going to be a shuffle, I think, but we'll see.
I don't know. I've got confidence. I really do. I think that Carlos Sainz is going to be obviously, I think Checo is going to possibly have a mid-season crumble as expected, but I just fully believe in Carlos's pace this year, and I really think he's going to hold that Ferrari team up. I believe in Charles too. I'm not going to throw Charles away here. He's going to do great as well, but I think Ferrari's going to be right there.
He was able to hold on to P4, which I find incredible.
Yeah.
He was able to hold off George and the McLarens and the Mercedes behind him. To hold on to that P4, which I think is incredible. I think it's kind of also, he was almost my driver of the day for that. It was like the let alone the issues he's having to still come on P4 is incredible. And I think Fred Vasseur also did a good job of kind of awarding that, being yeah, we have our issues to work through, but Charles did an amazing job, and so did Carlos. Another thing that I did forget to mention, I'm glad we kind of did a loop kind of thing. As I called last podcast, Jerry or Ginger, Christian Horner's wife, was in the paddock this week, or this weekend for the race. They were very cozy together. Great PR move. I just thought I'd mention that as a quick note before we kind of wrap up. I know you said you think Red Bull and Ferrari are going to stay the same. Does that mean you think we're on for a Ferrari podium next week?
Absolutely. So if we want to go into predictions now, Jeddah, very excited for Jeddah. I believe we're going to see a Red Bull win. I think Max is going to take the win, right? And that's, there's 3 things guaranteed in life: is death, taxes, and a Max Verstappen win on a Formula 1 weekend. But I don't want to say Checo's going to drop the ball yet. I think he's going to be P2 again. And then, honestly, I'm just going to say replicate. What's it called? Oh, God. Carlos is going to be P3. Max, Checo, and then Carlos Sainz. That's going to be the same podium. I think it's going to be exactly the same.
All right, Jason, what about you?
I think, it's definitely going to be Max, Leclerc, Perez, especially because Jeddah is a lot easier on tires. If you just look at the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix review that probably puts up, they say how abrasive it is on tires, and Bahrain is super abrasive on tires, maximum tire wear, and Red Bull have nailed that this year. So next week is a lot higher speed circuit. It has less wear on the tires. I think Ferrari are going to really show up and give Red Bull a run for its money. But I still think Max Verstappen 1, Leclerc 2, Perez 3.
I think I'm going to go kind of a mix of both of you. I think, contrary to Tristan, Checo's going to drop off sooner than we think. I think there's a lot of pressure on him this whole year. He's not only fighting for his seat, but for the rest of his career in F1. It's this is his make it or break it year. There's a lot of junior drivers under him. There's Liam Lawson. There's Daniel Ricciardo. There's a lot of people gunning for that seat. I think the pressure gets to him sooner rather than later. So I'm calling him P4. So not a huge drop, but I think that the 2 Ferraris are going to get the best of him. So I'm calling Max Carlos Charles.
Okay.
So
interesting.
I think it's Carlos redemption time. I think that
he's up for a seat next year.
It's true.
All right.
And in beliefs of, if our sick friend was here, I'm sure he would be rooting for a Lando win. So we'll assume that Steven has a McLaren 1-2, and then I don't know, Zhou Guan Yu P3.
I love that. All right. Quote of the day. Tristan, you've been kind of on a run. So let's see if you can take this one.
Don't say
I don't
that.
apologize. I don't apologize for winning.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
I know Jason knows this one.
This was this Sebastian Vettel multi 21.
It was Sebastian Vettel.
So that was Malaysia, like 2012,
Yep.
2013.
My heart was
yeah.
like, I wanted to say Hamilton, but I don't think Hamilton would say that. I was like, I don't think. I mean, he's cocky when he was cocky, but like, I just had a feeling that it wasn't him, and I immediately thought of Seb because Seb is occasionally he's dry like that. Like,
Well, Seb, when he was at Red Bull, was literally like Max Verstappen is now.
Yeah,
Right.
He was the villain of F1 in the same exact way,
I remember.
and he would do stuff like that.
Yeah,
like he ignored team orders and took the win of the race, and I think that's when he said that quote.
Right.
Yeah, I love it. Well, that is all for today. If you want more from us, don't forget to check out our socials, Instagram and TikTok at Lights Out Latest. We have Tech Tuesday, Wag Wednesday, Throwback Thursday, Fun Fact Friday, and Man on the Street videos. This week, I will be in Jeddah, so check out our Saturday videos and our stories because we will have live Jeddah footage up from that. And as always, the podcast will be up every Monday at 11:30 Eastern Time. Bye, guys, and thanks for watching.
See ya.
Bye.